Hello everyone and to our solid viewers. Today we're going to present to you the European literature. Just stay put and relax while listening and watching. I hope you will learn a lot. Let's go! And we are the Group 1 and I'm proudly presenting you my groupmates. Artagin Angelou S, Arabit Christina Lynn Q, Aguirre Nika Maurice V, Base RJ, Banal Herbert Lloyd, and Almario Mary Nympha. We will deliver to you all the information that you need to know in the best that we can. So what is European literature? It is also known as Western literature, is the literature written in the context of Western culture in the language of Europe, as several geographical or historical related languages. So a European literature is written in the context of Western culture in the language of Europe, including the ones belonging to the Indo-European language family as well as several geographical or historical related languages such as Basque and Hungarian. So we have here the different European literature. First, we have the Indo-European literature and languages. The common literary heritage is essentially that originating in ancient Greece and Rome. It was preserved, transformed, and spread by Christianity and thus transmitted to the vernacular language of the European continent, the Western Hemisphere, and other regions that were settled into by the Europeans. To the present day, this body of writing displays a unity in its main features that set it apart from the literature of the rest of the world. So an Indo-European literature and language is a family of languages comprising those spoken in most of Europe and in the parts of the world that colonized by Europeans since 1500. It is the subcontinent of India and some part of the Asia. The term was derived from the language family as we have Indo-Persian, Indo-Germanic, and other language family roots because in 1813, Thomas Young called it Indo-European, reflecting the connection between Sanskrit and classic European languages. Here are some of the Indo-European languages include Greek literature that dates back from the ancient Greek literature beginning in 800 BC to the modern Greek literature of today. Ancient Greek literature was written in Ancient Greek dialect. Literature ranges from the oldest surviving written works until works from approximately the 5th century AD. The next one is the Latin. The Latin literature includes the essays, histories, poems, plays, and other writings written in the Latin language. The beginning of Latin literature dates to 240 BC when the first stage play was performed in Rome. Latin literature would flourish for the next 6 centuries. The Germanic literature, it comprised those literary texts written in the German language. These include literature written in Germany, Austria, the German parts of Switzerland and Belgium, Liechtenstein, South Tyrol in Italy, and to a lesser extent works of the German diaspora. The next one is the Baltic. The Baltic literature that in this century year of the independence of each year of the Baltic republics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, great efforts are being made to promote the three very distinct literature of those countries in translation. Until now, when lists of works appearing in translation were produced by the literature promoting agency of each country. English translation made up of the shortest list among European languages. The Celtic literature, in the strictly academic context of Celtic studies, the term Celtic literature is used by Celticists to denote any number of bodies of literature written in a Celtic language, encompassing the Irish, Welsh, Cornish, Manx, Scottish Gaelic, and Breton languages in either their modern or earlier forms. And the last one is the Slavic literature. It is refers to the literature in any of the Slavic languages, which is Belarusian literature and Bosnian literature. And now, the ancient literature. It is influential in ancient literature. The use of clay, tablets, papyrus paper scrolls paved the way for the writing. Songs, poems, fables, anecdotes, and parables were all invented during this period. Before the spread of writing, oral literature did not always survive well, though some texts and fragments have persisted. August Nietzsche sees some fairy tales as literary survivals dating back to Ice Age and Stone Age narrators. Here are some influential works of the ancient literature include the Aeneid. It is the epic of Rome. It tells the adventure of Aeneas after the Trojan War, provides an illustrious historical background from the Roman Empire, best known for his epic poem, the Aeneid, was regarded by Romans as a national treasure. His work reflects the relief he felt as a civil war ended, the rule of Augustus began. Born a peasant, Virgil was raised on a farm before being educated in the Greek and Roman authors. The next one is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest epic. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells of the Sumerian Gilgamesh, the hero king of Uruk, and his adventures. This epic story was discovered in the ruins of the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh by Hormuzd Rassam in 1853. The Epic of Gilgamesh was one of the most beloved stories of Mesopotamia. The medieval literature. The fall of the Roman Empire marked the beginning of the medieval, or Middle Ages, also known as Dark Ages. Due to the prevailing condition during this period, barbarian invasion and Muslim conquest marked this era. Wars, famine, plagues, and decline in culture and learning, hence the greatest number of books published during this era. The medieval literature is a broad subject, encompassing essentially all written works available in Europe and beyond during the Middle Ages. The literature of this time was composed of religious writing as well as secular works. And some popular books during this period include History of British People by Venerable Bede. The Ecclesiastic History of English People, written by Venerable Bede, is about AD 731. It is a history of the Christian churches in England, and of England generally. Its main focus is on the conflict between the pre-scheme Roman Rite and Celtic Christianity. Bede became known as Venerable Bede by the 19th century because of his holiness, but this was not linked to consideration for sainthood by the Catholic Church. Paul the Deacon then referred to him as Venerable consistently. The next one is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. So the Canterbury Tales is a collection of 24 stories that runs to over 17,000 lines written in Middle English of Geoffrey Chaucer. Between 1387 and 1400, Chaucer's use of such a wide range of classes and types of people was without precedent in English. Now we have the Renaissance literature. The term Renaissance or rebirth or revival is given to the historical period in Europe that succeeded the Middle Ages. This period marked the reawakening of a new spirit of intellectual and artistic inquiry, which was the dominant feature of this political, religious, and philosophical phenomenon. Was essentially a revival of the spirit of ancient Greece and Rome. Written short stories, novellas, and tales were born in this period. So Renaissance literature refers to the European literature which was influenced by intellectual and cultural tendency associated with Renaissance. Renaissance is a French word meaning birth. It refers to a period in a European civilization that was marked by a revival of classical learning and wisdom. Some influential persons during this era include Christopher Columbus, who discovered the New World, the Americas, and Martin Luther, that initiated the Reformation in Europe. 19th century literature. This period has special interest as the formative era from which many modern literary conditions and tendencies derive. Influences that had their origins or were in development in this period: Romanticism, Symbolism, and Realism. So, the literature of the 19th century is refers to the world literature produced during the 19th century. Many of the developments in literature in this period's parallel changes is the visual arts and other aspects of 19th century culture. Main themes of novels written in the 19th century in Europe included rural life and community like that depicted in the works of Leo Tolstoy, problems of industrialization and urbanization like that depicted in Hard Times by Charles Dickens. Some literary giants who stood out during this period include Charles Dickens. A Tale of Two Cities wrote as a warning to the ruling power of England. The message was that the French Revolution was caused by social inequality and serious unrest. At the time the book was written, it was already historical fiction. The main idea of A Tale of Two Cities is the concept of resurrection. Characters are brought by to live throughout the novel. For example, Dr. Manette is freed from prison at the beginning of the novel, and Cartoon is spiritually resurrected at the end of the novel through his sacrifice. The next one is the Ode to Psyche. Ode to Psyche is a tribute to the Greek goddess Psyche, with whom Cupid fell in love. The myth symbolizes the purification of human intellect into soul of the elevation of love to divinity. John Keats, after addressing to Psyche, Keats entreats to her to listen to his tuneless music of sweet remembrance. The theme of a dream and reality also exists in the poem, as the poet is not sure to have been dreaming or awake and in his full sense as he encounters Psyche and Cupid in the state of sleep. The theme of beauty is touched upon when the poet describes both Psyche and Mother Nature.
Twentieth Century Literature by Edwardian Era, 1900 to 1940. This period marked an increasing sense of crisis and urgency. Doubts as to the 19th century faith in the psychological stability of the individual personality, and a deep questioning of all philosophical or religious solutions to human problems. 20th century literature. Some of the top-notch writers during this period included, we have four books, and the first title, The Golden Bough by Henry James. And the second book, the title is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. And the third title, Three Lives by Gertrude Stein. And the last but not the least, The Old Man in the Sea by Ernest Hemingway.
A chapter in Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. War and Peace is a novel by the Russian author Leo Tolstoy, first published serially, then published in its entirety in 1869. It is regarded as one of Tolstoy's finest literary achievements and remains an internationally praised classic of world literature. The novel contains 361 chapters, but Tolstoy said War and Peace is not a novel, even less it is a poem, and still a historical chronicle. Large sections, especially the later chapters, are philosophical discussion rather than narrative. So I will give you some background or history about the novel War and Peace. So Leo Tolstoy began writing War and Peace in 1863, and that year was finally he married and settled down at his country estate. September that year, he also wrote to Elizabeth, his sister-in-law, asking if she could find any chronicles, records, or diaries that were related to Napoleonic period in Russia. But he dismayed because he couldn't find any records, written records covered the domestic aspects of Russia life at that time. So the first half of the book was written in 1805 and published more the following year. Tolstoy was dissatisfied with this version, although he allowed several parts of it to be published with a different ending in 1867. He heavily rewrote the entire novel between 1866 and 1869. And Tolstoy's wife, Sophia Tolstaya, she copied many 7 separate complete manuscripts before Tolstoy considered it ready for publication. So he copied that and he published it. So many of the Russians who had read the serialized version were eager to buy the complete novel, and it was sold almost immediately. The novel was immediately translated after publication into many other languages. So these are the the translated into English, German, French, Spanish, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, Albanian, Korean, and Czech text. So I will give you some background or history about the novel War and Peace. So Leo Tolstoy began writing War and Peace in 1863, and that year was finally he married and settled down at his country estate. September that year, he also wrote to Elizabeth, his sister-in-law, asking if she could find any chronicles, records, or diaries that were related to Napoleonic period in Russia. But he dismayed because he couldn't find any records, written records covered the domestic aspects of Russia life at that time. So the first half of the book was written in 1805 and published more the following year. Tolstoy was dissatisfied with this version, although he allowed several parts of it to be published with a different ending in 1867. He heavily rewrote the entire novel between 1866 and 1869. And Tolstoy's wife, Sophia Tolstaya, she copied many 7 separate complete manuscripts before Tolstoy considered it ready for publication. So he copied that and he published it. So many of the Russians who had read the serialized version were eager to buy the complete novel, and it was sold almost immediately. The novel was immediately translated after publication into many other languages. So these are the the translated into English, German, French, Spanish, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, Albanian, Korean, and Czech text.
So let's proceed on the summary plot overview of War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy.
War and Peace opens in Russian city of St. Petersburg in 1805. As Napoleon's conquest of Western Europe is just beginning to stir fierce in Russia, many of the novel's characters are introduced at a society hostess party. Among them, Pierre Basukov, the socially awkward but likable illegitimate son of rich count, and Andrew Bolkonsky, the intelligent and ambitious son of retired military commander. We also meet the sneaky and shallow Kuragan family, including the wily father Vasily, the fortune hunter son Anatol, and the ravishing daughter Helene. We are introduced the Rostovs, a novel Moscow family, including the lively daughter Natasha, the quiet son Sonia, and the impetuous son Nicholas, who has just joined the army led by the old General Kutuzov.
Bonjour Tristesse, in English Hello Sadness, is a novel by François Sagan and published in 1954, when the author was only 18 at that time. The title is derived from a poem by Paul Eluard, A Peine de Figure, which begins with the lines Adieu Tristesse or Bonjour Tristesse. The book was written with a classical restraint and a tone of cynical disillusionment, and it hewed to traditional form during the period of experimentation in the French fiction. And here is the summary of Hello Sadness.
17-year-old Cécile spends her summer in a villa on the French Riviera with her father Raymond and his current mistress, the young superficial, fashionable Elsa, who gets on well with Cécile. Raymond is an attractive, worldly, amoral man who excuses his serial philandering with an Oscar Wilde quote about sin. Sin is the only note of vivid color that persists in the modern world. Cécile says, I believe that I could base my life on it and accept their languorous lifestyle as the ideal of privileged status. One of its advantages for Cécile is that her father, who has no intellectual interests, does not care if she studies or not. Another is that he gives her leeway to pursue her own interests, with the assumption that she will be an amusing addition to the superficial social gatherings he favors in the next villa to theirs is a young man in his 20s, Cyril, with whom Cécile has her first sexual romance. Their peaceful holiday is shattered by the arrival of Anne, whom Raymond had vaguely invited. A cultured, principled, intelligent, hard-working woman of Raymond's age, who was a friend of his late wife, and regards herself as a sort of godmother to Cécile. The three women all have claims on Raymond's attention. The remote, enigmatic Anne soon becomes Raymond's lover, and in the next morning she announces their engagement. Elsa moves out, then Anne tries to take Cécile under her wing. She tells Cécile to stop seeing Cyril and get back to her school books. Horrified at this threat to her lazy life as her father's darling, especially when contrasted with the romance between Raymond and Anne, Cécile devises a plan to prevent the marriage, while nevertheless feeling ambiguous about her machinations. With the idea of making Raymond jealous, Cécile arranges for Elsa and Cyril to pretend to be the couple and appear together at specific moments. When Raymond predictably becomes jealous of the younger Cyril, As the result of Cecile's scheming, he eventually pursues Elsa once again. But Cecile has misjudged Anne's sensitivity, with tragic results after seeing Raymond and Elsa together in the woods, with Raymond brushing pine needles off his boots. Anne tearfully drives away, and her car plunges from a cliff in a suspected suicide. Cecile and her father return to the empty, desultory life they were living before Anne interrupted their summer, though eventually reminiscing about Anne and the impact she had on their lives. Cecile lives with the regret of knowing that her manipulations led to Anne's death and a longing for their summer they shared.
Hello Sadness is the story of a sophisticated 17-year-old girl who is jealous about her father's attention and meddles in her father's impending remarriage with the tragic consequences. And the story is also about the inner feelings, the welcoming of the sadness at the end of the summer that was filled with illicit unconventionality that existed only to fill lives that would otherwise have been boring.